Hey, Redemption Orlando. I had mentioned in my sermon on Saturday that we were going to cover just some extra material that we didn't have time for. And so, if you're interested in this, you can take just a few minutes. Hopefully, this isn't going to be too long. And we're just going to look a little bit more at that verse that we looked at on Saturday, where Jesus said, "And anyone who says, 'You fool,' will be in danger of the fire of hell." And of course, we read that and think, man, that just seems a bit over the top. And what does that have to do with anything? Honestly, if I call someone a name, am I really going to wind up in hell? And so, if you were with us Saturday, you've gotten the whole context of this, the entire passage that we worked through, the whole point that Jesus is making. But really, this morning, what I want to do is just concentrate on this one part about, and you are in the danger of the fire of hell. And so, if you remember from Saturday, the very literal translation we gave of this was, "And anyone who says, 'You moron,'" or the Greek word moros, which is where we actually get our word moron from, will be in danger of the Gehenna of fire. And so, a lot of the times in the New Testament, in whatever Bible you have, the word that is often translated hell is this word Gehenna, which is fine that we've done that. But I think what happens a lot of the time with that word is we immediately bring to mind images and descriptions that are a much later development that Jesus would not have necessarily considered when he said the word Gehenna, nor would his listeners have considered when they heard him say this. So, right now, we're in the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus is preaching to the crowds. He says this phrase to them: "Anyone who says, 'Moron,' you'll be in danger of the Gehenna of fire." I highly doubt that anyone listening to Jesus in that moment went, yes, the Gehenna of fire, that fiery underworld, that's a fiery pit of lava where God smites all those who hate him and tortures them for eternity. Um, that is just probably not the description they had, uh, because this is an actual place. Like when Jesus says Gehenna, Jesus knows the actual location to which he is referring. The Jewish people listening to him know the actual place to which he is referring. And not only is this physical location mentioned in the New Testament, but then it's also mentioned in the Old Testament as well. And so the first place we see it mentioned is actually in the book of Joshua, when the borders of the land are being described, that the various tribes are going to take once they cross into the land. And in the Old Testament, there is a valley that's Ga Ben Hinnom, which literally is the valley of the son of Hinnom. So we don't get the story of this, but evidently at some point in the history of the Old Testament, there is some guy named Hinnom, and he goes and purchases this valley or takes this valley, and then at some point then wills it to his son, and it just becomes known as the Valley of the Son of Hinnom, or Ga Ben Hinnom. Ga being valley, Ben being the word for son, and then Hinnom, the guy's name who first owned the land. That eventually just gets shortened to Ga Hinnom, Valley of Hinnom. Then Jesus coming and the New Testament authors coming and writing, they just take that Hebrew word, translated into Greek, which becomes Gehenna, and then it translates into the same thing, the Valley of Hinnom. So this is a physical place. You can actually still go there today, and you can stand in the Valley of Hinnom. So there in the left-hand corner of that image, you see that red circle. That's the actual Valley of Hinnom. So next time someone gets mad at you, a coworker or anything, and they say, "Hey, go to hell," you could literally go and stand there if you want to. You could go stand in the Valley of Hinnom. And then you get this whole picture of Israel, the rest of Jerusalem, in the background. Kind of in the middle of the screen where it says Mount Moriah, you see a gold dome. That's the current Muslim mosque, the Dome of the Rock. Way to the right of the screen is the Mount of Olives, where Jesus was with his disciples and prayed before he was arrested to be taken and crucified. And then you've got this valley of Hinnom down there in the left. It's in the south western part of Jerusalem. So here's the physical location that Jesus is talking about. So when he says, and any one of you who says moron will be in danger of the Gehenna of fire, everyone instantly thinks of this place right here. They don't think of some fiery underworld. They are thinking of this physical location. That's what they know it to be. And so the question for us is, well, why is Jesus naming this valley? What is so significant about it that Jesus would talk about this valley in such a way as warning people not to have anger in their hearts, or they would be in danger of the fire of Gehenna? So if you've read any commentaries on Matthew, or really any biblical commentaries, and you come to this word Gehenna, I can almost guarantee that you have read that they talk about that Gehenna was the trash dump for Jerusalem, that the people would take their trash there, and of course the only way to get rid of the trash is to burn it or incinerate it. And so the idea or the application then being, well, just like the Israelites would take their trash to the trash dump and burn it, so too God will do with his enemies one day. He will take them out as trash, and they will be incinerated. That's become a very common, almost the go-to application and understanding of this term. What's interesting, though, is that recently there has been a lot of research done which shows that understanding is a very late development. So there was a period of time in Jerusalem, the new research says, in which the Valley of Hinnom was used as a trash dump and the trash was burned there. But that wasn't until like the Middle Ages. So you're talking like 1400s, 1500s Jerusalem, thousands of years after Jesus is Jerusalem doing that. There is absolutely no historical evidence, archaeological evidence, biblical evidence that in the time of Jesus, this Valley of Hinnom was being used as a trash dump. So for us to then say, when Jesus says that any of you who call others names, have anger in your heart, you'll be in danger of the fire of Gehenna, that is just not the image he is picturing when he says this, and that's not the image that his first listeners would have been picturing when they hear this. So the question still is then, well, what are they picturing? Why is Jesus bringing this up? And again, it's just amazing that Jesus, he's Jewish, he's got this entire just repertoire, catalog, data bank, whatever you want to call it, of Jewish scripture, the Old Testament, just in the back of his head, and everything he's saying goes back to that. Like he's not making things up, he's not inventing new things, he's going back to the history, to the religious terms that the people of Israel have always known. And so one of the first places, other than in where Joshua is describing the borders of the land, that we hear this term about the Valley of Hinnom is in 2 Chronicles chapter 28. And this is describing King Ahaz. He is the king of Judah. He is not a good king. He does evil in the eyes of the Lord, we're told. But specifically what we're told about Ahaz is this. It says he followed the ways of the kings of Israel, which were all primarily wicked and in the north. And he also made idols for worshiping the Baals, which are these false Canaanite gods. He burned sacrifices in the valley of Ben Hinnom. So there's your word right there, that physical location. He burned sacrifices there and sacrificed his children in the fire, engaging in the detestable practices of the nations of the Lord had driven out before the Israelites. He offered sacrifices and burned incense at the high places, on the hilltops, and under every spreading tree. So one of the first mentions that that we get when we hear of the valley of Ben Hinnom is this King Ahaz, who is not only setting up idols and worshiping them in this valley, but he is also sacrificing children by fire in this valley. And so now we start to see this connection between this valley of Ben Hinnom and fire, which starts to make a little bit more sense as to why Jesus is connecting Gehenna, the valley of Hinnom, with fire, and it's because of what Ahaz is doing there, that he is sacrificing the children of Israel to these false gods in this valley. As shocking as that is, and as horrible as that is, it does not end with Ahaz. A few kings later, you get another king named Manasseh, and he is going to do the exact same thing. So you just move a couple chapters over in your Bible, 2 Chronicles chapter 33. And it says, in both courts of the temple of the Lord, he built altars to all the starry hosts. So Manasseh has gone into the temple and he has actually built altars to other gods within the temple of Israel's God, Yahweh. He sacrificed his children, again, in the fire of the valley of Ben Hinnom, practiced divination and witchcraft, sought omens, and consulted mediums and spiritists. He did much evil in the eyes of the Lord, arousing his anger. And so we see this pattern continuing, that these kings of Israel are adopting these other religious practices from these other tribes, these other people groups that are around them, and it involves the sacrifice of children in fire. God becomes very displeased with this, and there are two prophets primarily who will actually warn against this and call out the nation of Israel, the tribe of Judah, for doing these things. One of those prophets being Jeremiah. And so Jeremiah in chapter 7, he's living in the time of Manasseh, so he's living while this is going on. And prophesying as this is going on. He says, the people, God speaking through Jeremiah, says, the people of Judah have done evil in my eyes, declares the Lord. They have set up their detestable idols in the house that bears my name and have defiled it. They have built the high places of the Topheth in the valley of Ben Hinnom to burn their sons and daughters in the fire, something I did not command, nor did it enter my mind. So that word Topheth, it's actually, it refers to a funeral pyre. And so you might be familiar with that if you think like Vikings, that they might have done this. This was also common in some of the other tribes around Israel. But someone would die, they would build the funeral pyre, put the body on top of it, and then burn the pyre with the body. Although what is happening here in the time of Manasseh and also in the time of Ahaz is they're not putting the bodies of the deceased on the Topheth. They're putting their live sons and daughters and burning them in sacrifice. And God says, this is absolutely detestable to me. I never asked for this. In fact, it never even entered my mind to consider doing such a thing. That's how foreign this is to me. And so again, and we won't get into all of this right now. This could go into a whole nother conversation. But even the fact that God says right here that this is something I did not command, nor did it enter my mind. The idea then that God would then say, for anyone who says you moron, you will be in the danger of the Gehenna of fire. That he would then turn around and say, oh, and you know what I'm going to do to all of you who have sinned against me? I'm going to burn you in a valley or in a pit for a very long time because you have displeased me. And yet here he says through his prophet, I did not command this, nor did it even enter my mind to do such a thing. Like this is abhorrent to God to do that. So Jeremiah goes on and he says, so beware, again, God speaking to the people, beware, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when people will no longer call it Topheth or the valley of Ben Hinnom, but the valley of slaughter. For they will bury the dead in Topheth until there is no room. Then the carcasses of this people will become food for the birds and the wild animals, and there will be no one to frighten them away. So what Jeremiah is now predicting here is God is warning the people. He says, if this continues and you will not turn away, destruction is coming. And ultimately it does come through the nation of Babylon. This is when the people are carried off into exile because of all the things they have done. The temple is destroyed, Judah is destroyed, and they are sent off into Babylon for about 400 years is what it ends up being. And so what God tells them here is if you don't turn, if you don't stop doing these things that are so abhorrent to me, the day is going to come where it won't just be the valley of Ben Hinnom, but it'll be the valley of slaughter. When Babylon comes in to destroy the city and destroy this temple and to take you away, so many of you will die in that process. There will no longer be room in the city for you to bury your dead anymore. You will actually take them to the same valley where you sacrificed your children, and your bodies will be put there. It's this great reversal. What you have now done is now going to happen to you, is what God is telling the people here. And so when we come back to Matthew chapter 5, verses 21 and 22, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, you shall not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to a brother or sister, Raka, is answerable to the court, and anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fire of hell. And so when Jesus says this phrase here at the end, and what he is picturing, and likely what the other people begin to picture, because they have this whole understanding of what has occurred in Gehenna, what has occurred in the valley of Hinnom. They remember the child sacrifices. They remember the bodies being piled up there. The people who lit those fires now found that to be their burial place where they would meet their end as well. And I think what God is, or what Jesus is saying here in terms of this, as he's talking about anger, the fire you start, what you light in your heart through being angry, you need to be very careful with. Because if you were not careful with that, it is going to come back and it is going to consume you. What you might think is a righteous anger, what you might think is an appropriate use of anger. Jesus is saying you need to be very, very careful with, because in doing so, you are lighting a fire. And again, you can go back and listen to the sermon from last week, get all the context for this, but you are lighting a fire that will turn back on you, and you will actually be the one who is in danger of being consumed by your anger. Just like the people of Israel thought they were doing a good thing by sacrificing their children. God tells them, actually, no, this is actually going to work to your detriment. The fire you have lit will one day consume you, because this is not what I have asked for at all. And so hopefully that helps with some context there of why Jesus seems to be so serious about anger and our use of anger, why he's threatening hell, or literally Gehenna, for those who would allow their anger to get out of hand. Hopefully that helps just a little bit. We'll have our Q&A night coming up on April 5th. And so if you have more questions about that, please submit some questions on that, and we'd be happy to go over more of it. But yeah, hopefully this helps. Hopefully this gives you some insight, and hopefully you can log this away in your mind too, because as we move into the next passage we're going to look at, this word Gehenna is going to be used a couple of more times, and it's going to be the same image, Jesus picturing this moment in Israel's history as he uses this word. So have a wonderful week. We look forward to seeing you guys on Saturday, and let us know if you have any questions.